According to the latest AP and ORC poll, his approval rating stands at 36%, down 4 points from just last month. And a year into President Trump's second term, 3 new polls show more voters now say Joe Biden did a better job as president than Donald Trump. A Harvard-Harris poll found 51% of registered voters say Trump is doing a worse job than Biden versus 49% who say he's doing better. The latest Rasmussen poll found 48% of likely voters say Biden did a better job as president. It's compared with 40% who chose Trump. And a new YouGov Economist poll found 46% of U.S. adults say Trump is doing a worse job than Biden, compared with 40% who say he's doing better. We're going to dig into a little bit of the mentality behind those numbers with Matt Bartlett, who was a former U.S. State Department appointee during Trump's first term. Also with us, the host of When We Win with Maya Rupert podcast, Maya Rupert. She's managed mayoral and presidential campaigns, and she also has a new book out, The Real Ones. It is out now. I am holding my copy quite proudly. I cannot wait to dig in, and congratulations on publishing it. So let's just kind of start here with the politics behind the polling, right? I think immigration is obviously the thing that is lending the most to an issue that Trump rode in on with positive approval. And now that the country sees what he's doing, it's falling. And so for Republicans who have had a winner on this, when you watch the way that the administration has overstepped with their deportation agenda, are there Republicans who can get this back on track, or is this just the White House's show and they're along for the ride?
Yeah, great question, and I'm not sure that you can get this one back on track here.
Yeah.
As you said, immigration, illegal immigration, a very legitimate issue in our country.
Totally.
One of the president's most powerful, strongest political issues. And what happened? Secretary Noem, Corey Lewandowski, Dan Bovino, neutered it.
Greg Bovino.
Neutered it, neutralized this issue. Typically in politics, it takes a lot of political jujitsu to make your opponent's strength a weakness. This wasn't Democrats doing it. This was his own administration coming up so short in a very sad, horrific, maybe historic ways that, again, now you're seeing, as Joe Scarborough tweeted, you saw years of open border policies that reflected in polling that Americans want it back. Now you're seeing open cruelty, and that pendulum swing right back.
I think that's right. And I'm wondering the ways that you see Democrats trying to maneuver around this issue. Yes, they're pushing for accountability, but is there something more for a party that, frankly, and by their own omission, has lacked a coherent immigration strategy over the course of the last decade?
Absolutely. And I think there are 2 pieces of it, right? There's the dealing with ICE piece. And I think more and more you're seeing what has moved to the mainstream of the Democratic Party used to be this fringe idea, but it's that we can have immigration enforcement without ICE because it is too easy. This idea that it's become a rogue agency, more and more people are seeing that that was kind of baked into its creation, that there's a way to do immigration enforcement that isn't lacking in compassion, that isn't inhumane. That's now the mainstream position in the Democratic Party, and that is entirely because of how the Republicans handled this moment. But then there's the broader issue of immigration used to not just be enforcement. It used to be an entire system where enforcement was one piece, but we were talking about a pathway to citizenship. We were talking about fixing our asylum process. You're hearing people bring that stuff more and more in because we can't just focus on immigration as a mechanism of enforcement. That's never been the history of that issue in this country.
Yeah, immigration is not just deportation. And I know that Republicans have made this phrase of pathway to citizenship. The Trump administration and its allies always, well, that's amnesty immediately. I think the other piece of this, too, as I look ahead to the midterms, is the ways that Democrats now are trying to use the Epstein issue as a way to pierce the veil for MAGA voters who feel lied to by Trump and allies about transparency that they've still not yet gotten. And I wonder, because you spend a ton of time in New Hampshire, maybe feel open to the fact that the administration is not as honest as they say they are, especially on this issue and others.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. And let's just be clear, Epstein should be a pursuit of transparency, of justice for the victims, the hundreds, if not thousands of girls. Politically, it's very asymmetric, atypical, how it fractures. Like you just said, a lot of this is our government telling us the truth? And a lot of people still continue to ask, I'm not sure that that's the case. We just saw a disgraceful hearing on the Hill this week with the Attorney General. So, yeah, I think right now, what are we hearing from Democrats? The Epstein class in terms of referring to Republicans. And maybe some of that rings true because so many, even in the cabinet, have ties. Again, I'd be careful about or caution how we approach this. It should be in terms of justice. The shelf life on this, we'll see how you approach the midterms. But again, right now, very legitimate questions remain.
Yeah, and I think I did some reporting on it this week. The idea that they are trying to use this, Democrats are, as a way to say there is a system for the elites, the haves, and the have-nots. And that is a message that branches not just Epstein, not just immigration, but also when it comes to affordability. And I think it takes us back to 2024, where Republicans won all three branches of government by focusing their campaign messaging on pocketbook issues with ads like these.
Whoa.
What's that?
I just built a budgeting app in Base 44.
Guys, I just built an app.
Impossible.
Nina can't code.
Prices have gotten way too high. Quality of life has gone down. And we're stuck with do-nothing politicians.
I remember when 20 bucks fed the whole family with change to spare. As a mom, I know every penny counts. So I'm on a mission to slash wasteful spending and roll back prices for families.
My name is Monica de la Cruz, and I approve this message because the cost of groceries is getting way out of hand. Menos. Look, shopping for the family.
And now, of course, this is a similar playbook that we're going to watch Democrats put up. But I think what's important about these ads, not just that they go back in time and show us the way Republicans ran, but these are some of the most vulnerable districts on the map. Pennsylvania, New York, Texas, Virginia. We showed Jen Kiggins. These are the places that Democrats are now trying to target with this same message. And I wonder if you see them doing that well, or for Republicans on the flip side of that, have they gotten away from it?
I think they've gotten very far away from it. And I think what you described is exactly how Epstein is really going to play out in the midterms.
Yeah.
I think what you're going to see is Republicans having to own what Trump has essentially made them own, which is that they are the ones trying to protect a system where the wealthy and the elite get one set of rules and everyone else gets something else. And we are seeing more and more that voters are tired of that. Voters are really coming together around this idea that the system that is set up so that the powerful don't have to play by the same rules, that is really upsetting to voters. It comes out in affordability. It comes out in democracy. We should all have one set of rules. And if you're watching this play out in Epstein, how are these the people? They're not talking about the people in the grocery store, right? So it's an entirely different audience. And I think every congressional Republican who is running in the midterms is going to have to, if they want to talk about affordability, the question is, well, if you're willing to protect people and let them live by a different system that's set up for them, the system that we're living by is rigged against us. How do you square that? And I don't think they have an answer for it.
Yeah, and I do think that's also going to be a disciplined message that Democrats are going to have to do, because it's easy to lose the thread in all of that. Can Republicans get out of the paradox box that they are in on this right now? Can they steer the ship back as they talk about it's tax season, we just did tax cuts? I hear this from Republicans all the time.
Yeah, I mean, listen, let's do a little table setting here. 2024, massive year for Republicans,
Yes.
right? The House, the Senate, the presidency on a very frothy economy. By the way, in 2024, Republicans lost 2 seats net in the House, okay? So we should just remember that. Does anybody think things are better right now than they were in 2024 for the Republican Party? I'm not sure about that. And forget the Republican Party, how about the American pocketbook? So yeah, the affordability issues, what brought you to town, can absolutely drive you back out. I'm not sure there's any type of messaging or even policy that we're seeing right now that's going to, convince voters otherwise. Again, very rocky road headed for the GOP, much of which is on their own making.
Yeah, and yet still so much time before November. So we will see what we see, because each week brings some new thing.
Polls from CNN's Harry Eaton this week shows that Trump's core voters are losing faith in him, in part due to the fact that 63,000 manufacturing jobs disappeared since December 2025. Liberation Day and Trump's tariffs are a large reason why. Another poll shows that Republicans' American pride was higher during Obama than now. Not by much, but I thought it was funny since Trump feels the need to compete with Obama.
President Trump took ownership of the current state of the economy, saying, "I'm very proud of it," he said. This comes as there is new polling showing that many voters are not as happy as the president. with the way that things are going with said economy. CNN's chief data analyst, Harry Enton, is running the numbers on this, but also speaks to the changing nature of President Trump's base right now. Talk me through this.
Yeah, okay. So, if you know anything about Donald Trump, you know that he built his 2 presidential victories on winning voters without a college degree, while Donald Trump's base with non-college voters is absolutely collapsing. What are we talking about here? Well, why don't we just take a look? Voters without a college degree on Donald Trump. Look at this. Back in 2024, he won those voters over Kamala Harris by 14 points. You come over to this side of the screen. What's his net approval rating with him? He is underwater by 9 points. That's a 23-point switcheroo with his base of non-college voters. He is absolutely collapsing with the group of voters that helped put him into the White House, Kate.
Okay, so how are these non-college voters feeling about 2026?
Okay, so you see this drop of 23 points, right, from plus 14 Trump to now he's underwater by 9 points. How is that impacting their views on how they're going to vote for Congress? Well, you see a similar story going on here, right? Take a look. In the 2024 election, Republicans won those voters, those non-college voters, by 13 points. Now they're just ahead by just 1, 2, 3, 4 points. When you can count it on one hand, you know that you're in trouble if you're Donald John Trump and the Republican Party, in this case the Republican Party, when it comes to the voters in Congress. And of course, a 4-point lead among non-college voters is not anywhere close to being good enough because Democrats are dominating among voters with a college degree, up by 20 points. At this point, the Democratic base with college voters is rising, and the Republican base with non-college voters is collapsing.
One of the big promises, circling back to the economy, one of the big promises from President Trump was bringing back manufacturing jobs. And that speaks to somewhat of this split that you're kind of highlighting here. What are the hard numbers on this?
Yeah, okay. One of the reasons why Donald Trump has been able to bring non-college voters into the Republican ranks is because he said, hey, I'm going to bring back those jobs, those manufacturing jobs that were lost to free trade, right? Bring in those tariffs, restrict those jobs from moving overseas. But there's just a bit of a problem going on here. How about those manufacturing jobs? In December of 2025, compared to the beginning of the Donald Trump presidency, the manufacturing jobs have gone adios amigos. See you later. They've been going away, down 63,000 versus January of 2025, with an even larger collapse since Liberation Day, right? So what we're dealing with is a Donald Trump message that is not actually meeting the reality, and that is why non-college voters have been going away from the President of the United States and away from Republicans as well.
Important message in all of these numbers. Thanks so much, Harry.
Thank you.
President Trump now declaring the country is in the Trump economy.
There has been a major shift over the last decade among young adults in terms of how they feel, their pride in being an American. Because what are we talking about here? Well, let's just take a look. Under age 35, pride to be an American, extremely or very proud. You go back a decade ago under Barack Obama, it was 71% of those under the age of 35 were extremely or very proud to be American. That number has fallen through the floor. Look at this now. That number has fallen in half now. Just 36% of those under the age of 35 are either extremely or very proud to be an American. And this is a number that we've seen across the polling data. There has just been a major shift, a historic shift in the pride that young Americans feel for their country.
Let's break that down by party. Do you have this over the same period of time among Democrats?
Yeah, okay. So there are two reasons why pride in this country are falling. One is younger Americans. The other is Democrats. Okay, let's take a look here. This is from 2013 to late 2025, a slightly different survey, but if you look at the same survey that I was looking at on the first slide, it's the exact same story. Democrats' pride to be an American, extremely or very proud. In 2013, it was 83% under Barack Obama. Look at this number now. Just 31% of Democrats say they are extremely or very proud to be an American. That is the lowest number on record. When you combine both youth and being a Democrat, that number falls into the 20. Young Democrats, Generation Z Democrats, less than 30% of them are either extremely or very proud to be an American. So what we're seeing here is both age as well as partisanship playing a major role in the fact that pride and the proudness to be an American, either extremely or very proud, is at record lows.
Yeah, and the motivations, just look at the time period for Democrats, is in line with how politics have changed. How about Republicans?
Okay, this is where it gets interesting, right? Because you mentioned, right, and I had mentioned that Barack Obama was president in the mid-2010s, and now Donald Trump a Republican, Democrat to Republican being president. But what about Republicans? Their numbers, have actually stayed pretty steady. So let's take a look at this exact same poll. Republicans, pride to be an American, extremely are very proud. In 2013, it was 92%. By late 2025, pretty close, right? 80%, maybe a slight fall in this PRRI survey. But I will note in the Gallup poll, which measures over a similar period, there was no change. There was no change. So what we're seeing is we see younger people and Democrats really shifting away, shifting downward in their proudness to be an American, while Republicans have stayed pretty steady despite the partisanship of the president's changing. But Democrats very much shifting away as the partisanship of the president's thing. Donald Trump has really sort of changed the equation for young Americans and Democratic Americans, or those who identify as Democrats, while he really hasn't changed the equation when it comes to Republicans, whose pride levels have actually remained fairly steady over the same period.
Very interesting look. Thanks, Harry.